Do you believe that you're called to be? Called into this moment? Called to be the unique, magnificent creation of spirit that you are? We sometimes think of our calling to be as so complicated. But when we break it down to spiritual principles, it's simple, is it not? We're called to be love. We're called to be peace. We're called to be freedom. But what does it take to fulfill that calling? What does it take to say yes? On the surface, it can just seem like it takes a commitment. Yes, yes. It takes an answer. Yes. But when you look deeply beneath the surface, we begin to see that there are things that come up to challenge that yes, to challenge that commitment, to challenge that calling. And it begins to become evident that it takes something else to be what we are called to be. It takes a divine faculty. Charles Fillmore intuited, after studying world religions, he intuited that there are 12 divine faculties that kind of align with the chakra system. And the faculty of strength, the faculty of divine strength, is what it takes to have the power to be what we are called to be. Now, when Charles Fillmore defined the word strength, he said it's the energy of God. So when we call forth strength, we call forth the energy of God. He said that it is freedom from weakness, stability of character, power to withstand temptation, capacity to accomplish. All of those things are the demonstration of strength. And certainly those are the things that are needed for us to step forward in being who we are called to be, in activating what we are called to activate on this planet, no? But applied incorrectly, strength, using the energy of strength, applying it in worldly ways can be misguided and inevitably ends in failure. Even if it has the illusion of building up worldly things, worldly freedoms, if it is not spiritually based, it ends up in failure. It ends up taking us away from that calling of what we're here called to be, and we begin to step into misalignment. It's easy to see how this shows up in our world. I was just at a lunch interview with a ministerial student who is writing a paper currently on spiritual ethics and bioethics. And they're asking all of these deep questions about what's right and what's wrong. How do we know if things are in alignment? What are your beliefs? What is your idea about source and about God? And what is your idea about good and about evil? And so we have this beautiful conversation about the principles and the possibilities and what our minds believe. And we began to venture into that idea of when bad things happen. And what is God? When bad things happen, you begin to start to say, the idea is that there is either an impotent God that cannot affect those things, right? Or you begin to go along with that idea, well, maybe it's all good and I just can't see it now, right? Or you begin to wrestle with other ideas. For me, it's about the absolute and the relative. In the absolute realm, we can take that bird's eye view. We're not even attached to our skin, so why would we care so much if something is going on with this human body? Because we're in and out of it. That's the absolute realm. So why would those things matter as much? But in the relative realm, when you talk about Darfur, when you talk about ISIS, when you talk about the things that are going on, there are some horrific things happening in the experience of humanity, no? And so that's in the relative realm. So how do we get there? I don't believe that it means we have an impotent God. I think that it means that we are using the energy of God, our power of strength, in a way that is off track, in a way that is missing the mark, in a way that is unaligned with our call to be. Because we are called to be these spiritual God essence faculties. We're called to co-create. And if God is love, then it is my calling to stand in love and to create from love and to create and multiply more love. So when I am using my strength and my power to step away from that, I am misaligned. And in truth, it always ends in failure. Because one separate sense self's success or reaching a goal or a vision, if not in alignment with love, if not in alignment with peace, if not in alignment with divine power, does not lead to anything. It does not lead to anything that is worthy. A little discussion came up about the environment. And I said that I think, because, there are some big conversations happening about the environment and also about biotechnology, right? Stem cell research, all sorts of things going on with what is possible with medicine, with science, with the world. And for me, it came back to discernment. The idea of discernment and the idea of strength and staying with spiritual strength and moving forward in alignment with our co-creative abilities, rather than getting off track and using one's strength to create their own individual, separate sense of paradise at the sacrifice of others. We talked a little bit about GMOs and Monsanto and how did we get to these places where they're saturating food in chemicals and pesticides, knowing that that is unhealthy in our bodies, that this can create disease, that this can create just body systems that do not function in the highest way, right? Do not function in accord of the way that we were born to function. Things that jack up our system. There was recently there's a program, Vice, that's a documentary, kind of like a 60 Minutes, but investigative reports, and it goes into world issues. And one of the issues that it was just diving into was the tobacco industry and how, because finally, in the United States, we're making some rules about, like, I can't try to keep selling you something I know is going to kill you and then put it in all of our healthcare system that everyone has to, pay for it. I can't market to you without being honest, right? And so the tobacco industry is exporting that, right? Exporting that beautiful blessing of cigarette addiction, right? So with that exporting of it, in this investigative report, they go kind of into the history of what I see as, when I'm talking about GMOs, when I'm talking about all of these things, I'm talking the pesticides, when we're talking about the tobacco industry, we're talking about the place where somewhere, to some degree, it may have started all with positive intentions, but somewhere to some degree, there wasn't strength. Somewhere, to some degree, strength and our calling to be were not married, were not merged, and were not fused to such a degree that a different path was created, a different path was walked along. And enough people, enough systems had to also have that lack of strength, that lack of character, that the opposite of freedom from weakness, right? So the weakness, the shakiness of character, temptation, being drawn into temptation, the capacity not to accomplish in line with what we're called to be, but to accomplish for this limited sense of self, this ego identity, this ego idea of me or my company or my corporation that needs to grow at the expense of others. That somehow there's somehow that my being dishonest or my being out of integrity is with others is okay if it benefits me, right? So all of that is steps of strength, right? Maybe not grand decisions, maybe not conspiracy theories, maybe not these big things, but little tiny decisions here and there, bit by bit, little tiny decisions that got us out of alignment because we weren't acting from a commitment to our calling to be and merging that with the strength of character. That's why I think that we have car engines, that we have the same manufacturer here in the United States, and the vehicles get half the miles per gallon than they do in Europe. It's available. It's accessible. But not only is the same vehicle made with twice the miles per gallon in another country, but I'm not even allowed to import it. I can't go get it myself and bring it over here. So if I want wheat that's not saturated in this and that, right? We're fighting right now for labeling laws. We're fighting right now to be able to have the truth so that we can make a decision based on what we think is best. Interesting, isn't it? So all of that, I think, comes from these moments, small moments, of not being in spiritual strength. Because spiritual strength and that commitment of strength and our calling to be is what keeps us on track moment by moment. We think of strength as something that we have to get once and for all, like we can go to a boot camp and all of a sudden I can be a strong person and I can make it through anything that comes up in my life. But I see strength as more of that subtle moment-to-moment energy, that moment-to-moment drawing forth from the soul of our character and to the best of our ability, using discernment to step forward into the great good. And any time that we go awry, that we go off track, that we miss the mark, well, guess what? We have more than enough intelligence, more than enough energy, and more than enough love to harmonize that misstep in an instant. In an instant. Has there ever been anyone that has corrected something, forgiven someone, rearranged something, been accountable for what they did, and an amazing healing came out of that? A healing that brought more good than you could imagine, so much good that you wouldn't even trade the mishap. Strength is the faculty that keeps us on track and empowers our commitment, that sustains our momentum forward into our vision. It is the faculty, the divine faculty existent within each one of us, perfectly positioned, perfectly competent, perfectly created to get us to where we want to be and to where we are going. I want to share with you from the 7th day of Lent in Unity's Lenten booklet on strength. I am stronger than any challenge inside and out. Strength is our divine power to stay the course, persevere, withstand temptation. We often think in terms of physical strength, but our spiritual strength is so much greater. Our spiritual strength is the power of who we truly are, our integrity, our convictions, our unflagging commitment to doing what is ours to do. It is the foundation for our courage and tenacity. When Jesus was confronted by the religious authorities of his day, he used spiritual strength to stick to what he believed. In spite of pressure to change, he held to his truth and lived from it. When we apply our divine strength, we are empowered and emboldened to step into our greatness. We are free to be the unique expressions of God we are. That's spiritual strength. But acting for the individual self at the expense of others and using spiritual strength to plow through that, I believe, is misalignment. When I was talking about that Vice program on the tobacco industries, one of the most mind-boggling things I saw in that documentary was a bit on, you've probably heard of flame retardants that are in everything, right? They're in mattresses, they're in curtains, they're in cushions, they're in pillows, they're probably in the seats you're sitting on, and we bless them. But these flame retardants, at some point along our journey in our country, were put in fabrics, right? They're put in everything so that it didn't catch on fire, right? Well, we've come to find out that these flame retardants, what everything is soaked in, are toxic. The NRDC website talks about the ineffectiveness, it says that they're ineffective, the flame retardants are ineffective in preventing furniture fires, and they're linked to serious health effects. In fact, the chemicals can make fires more toxic by forming deadly gases and soot, the real killers in most fires. It goes on to say that Americans carry higher amounts of these chemicals in their bodies than anyone else in the world. It also goes on to say that these chemicals are released into the environment, and they can be found in the air, the water, and wildlife, and carried away in the air as far away as the Arctic, where they then pollute native populations, marine mammals, and even polar bears. So, why wouldn't they have just come out of everything the moment we figured it out, right? It might be this fear of like, well, what if everything just goes up in flames immediately? But, you know, if you think for 1 second, you can just imagine if there's really a house fire, I mean, how logical is it to think your couch isn't going to burn or your mattress isn't going to burn, right? A little flame retardant's not going to help it. But what would it help? What would a little flame retardant in your mattress or in your house, on your couch, help? Maybe if you were smoking a cigarette and you started to fall asleep and the cigarette landed on your couch. Maybe if there was a flame retardant in it, it would be just enough to not make it go on a fire, right? Not create a fire in your home. Maybe if it was in your mattress, then maybe it would be just enough that when that cigarette landed, it wouldn't cause a fire, it would just make a burn. It is the tobacco industry that lobbied to put flame retardant in everything. Do you see that insanity? So we all have it in everything. Now, even if you're not a smoker, because of an industry that was trying to protect itself, right? So rather than having people be accountable, rather than being accountable for what it is, it sacrificed the health of the many to have its own agenda. I need my company, I need my money, and I need my self-interest protected. So I'm going to disguise it and say I'm protecting you, and everyone is at the effect of that selfish choice of the very few. And you know what? It's gone on for years and years, even after having this information, right? Years and years. And you think, well, how do we not get this? How does this stuff that doesn't make sense happen? I think this stuff that doesn't make sense happens because we are called to bring forth and to expand our divine faculty of strength and to let it be there even in the midst of things that threaten our simple little ego identity, our simple little, let me protect this being, Erin, at time and space, at this time and space, right? That little idea of me, that's not success. That's not success. That's failure in a grand way. Anytime we're not connected with our call to be and we're not using our spiritual strength to empower it. And in fact, the illusion is that we will somehow build up treasures on earth. But the truth is that when we step into our strength, we build forth a consciousness that prospers and multiplies and expands our life like the Christ presence, like Jesus teaching at that time and sticking to the principles. It expanded, his ministry expanded from one man, 3 years and 12 little disciples. But a massive commitment to the calling to be and to spiritual strength. A commitment that went beyond any of the needs or identities of the people of the time. It was beyond time and space. And as Charles Fillmore would say, the atoms crashed into the ethers. That when that consciousness was demonstrated, atom smashing power of mind, it's all about that consciousness, that when we demonstrate that high and holy sacred consciousness, it bursts forth as a tuning fork into all of the ethers, available now and accessible for anyone to call upon, for anyone to call upon. thank goodness for, with a lot of hard work and a lot of persistence, there have been community groups that have stepped forward to change those specific regulations. So as far as January 1st, 2015, there has been a reversal of some of the laws saying we have to have flame retardants in everything. Just like in Europe, they don't, right? So now but that was a group that had to stay strong, right? To stand up, to listen, to open intelligence, and to say what's going on here, to find out the story, and to get in alignment, to get into alignment. So how do we get there? For whatever it is for each of us as individuals on our spiritual journey, how do we get to strength? We each have a circumstance or a situation in our lives where the presence of strength would make a significant difference. Where we are being pulled by the vision that is in us, where we are knowing what we are called to be, but that we feel a little bit of fear, a little bit of shakiness of character, a little bit of weakness, whatever it is. And the presence of divine strength, the presence of opening up and activating that faculty would make all the difference in the world. So what are the steps to get there? And what are the illusions that could catch us along the way and bring us down another path? Well, the first step is to recognize, as Eric Butterworth said, strength is the reality of you. Strength is the reality of you. In an affirmation that is, strength is the reality of myself. Strength is the reality of me. He says it is the divine level with which you need to identify whenever you are tempted to lean. So that idea is that strength is within you, that it's not something that has to come to you, that existent in any moment of leaning, in any moment of fear, in any moment of weakness, that in fact there is a creative power, a creative faculty that when we are present to the situation, we can also in a moment become present to the truth that that situation cannot be existent without the fullness of spiritual strength needed to meet that moment. That in fact, that is the divine design of the universe. That with everything created, there is all of the spiritual qualities, faculties, substance existent to match and in fact exceed the needs of that moment. But that's the first thing to remember because we tend to feel separate from that idea. Other people are strong, I need to get it from somewhere. How can I build up that strength? No, existent in you is the fullness of that strength. That strength, that God power is everywhere present. It's born in you and it's born to match the situations we encounter. Do we believe that? That there is strength born to match the situations we encounter. The first step is to try that on, even if we have doubts. To look at whatever is before us and say, born in this moment is the strength needed, the absolute strength and more needed to meet this situation with integrity, with peace. We got to remember that it's not boot camp. A lot of times we think that we can just do one thing, that it's a fast food restaurant. I want my dose of strength for this lifetime, once and for all. But building up spiritual muscles is like building neurological muscles. It's building strength one moment at a time. But we get on ourselves. Like if you notice anytime you're processing and you don't feel you're strong enough or you feel you're in fear or any of these things, take a pause, take a break, and just notice, can I handle this moment? Just this one, right here. Right here. This one that I'm breathing, this one that I'm in this room, this one that I'm right here and right now, can I handle this very moment? Most of the times our answer is yes. I have enough strength for this moment right here. But then we become our minds, and we begin going into that mind, and we begin going, well, but I don't have the strength for all the things that are going to come after this moment, and in 2 seconds, this is what's going to happen, and in a week, this is what's going to happen, and if this continues, then that's going to happen, and I just don't have the strength for that. I'm not there. That's right. We're not there. It's not something that we can store up and pocket away. It's something that we practice in a moment. And building it and practicing it in a moment is what builds it in consciousness. We can't expect, can we, to go to the gym one time and do 10 bicep curls and all of a sudden we've got muscles, right? We build it up in increments as we use it. It's a practice. No one would ever take a third grader and send him into a sixth grade class without prepping them and saying, you will have everything you need when you get there to have the capacity, the strength, the fortitude to understand and get what's going on, right? You would never take a third grader and just plop them in a sixth grade class without any conversation and go, you should be able to do this. You should be able to do this. But isn't that what we do to ourselves? We look down the road. We look to the curriculum that's ahead of us, and we say, I can't pass that test. I'm not strong enough for that test. I know I can handle it now, but I can't handle what's coming. What's coming is an illusion. Because the self that is not in the strength and the consciousness and the capacity needed to be in that situation isn't there when we jump from our minds to that moment. It's there when we presence it moment by moment. Moment by moment. So are we willing to stop mistreating ourselves and stop expecting of ourselves to be able to solve all of the issues of a lifetime, to be able to be in every stage of our lives, to be able to be even in tomorrow today? It's about the present moment and building the strength moment to moment, because choice by choice, that is how we build the consciousness that surrounds us. If you really think of building a consciousness of strength, think about it like exercise. Think about it like retirement. You don't save once and expect to have a retirement account. You don't read one book and expect intelligence. You don't eat one good meal and expect wellness. And you don't have one visit to the gym and expect overall fitness. And you can't go to the gym next week today, right? You just can't do it. But then we would all be obsessing, would we not? I mean, think about the things, that little example, if it's exercise and fitness, well, then I get it all in right now. What is it for you that your mind races to the future and goes, I've got to get it in all right now because I don't have enough for tomorrow? And can we bring that back to right now, just to right now, and say, this is where I'm called to be. It's this moment. And in this moment, I have all the capacity to deal with, not only to deal with, but to thrive in the midst of what is in front of me. Because that's the truth of the spiritual practice. That is why we have a spiritual practice, is to build that endurance. And when we build that endurance, moment by moment, day by day, we build a consciousness that surrounds us. We build a consciousness of strength. We begin to have those qualities of strength, the physical endurance. We begin to have the mental endurance. We begin to have that stewardship of the mind, the stewardship of the field of the mind, so that we're not simply recipients of the thoughts we think. We become co-creators. We become empowered. We become activators. We begin to build spiritual strength. So we feel the commitment to our calling. And every moment that we step into that strength of that calling, we expand. We expand our consciousness. We expand our dominion. We expand our ability. Winfried Hausman said, in your God-given potential, strength is made to serve us, and to serve us best in the evolutionary process of developing the God-ideated human of the future. We are called to develop within us and among us, the God-ideated human of the future. And we'll do it moment by moment, step by step, bringing our calling to be and merging it with spiritual strength. And remembering that there is a land in consciousness. It is the land of I am, our I am nature. And from that nature, we draw forth and we pull forth everything that is needed and necessary to bring heaven closer to earth. Namaste.